DC, make some noise. If you're visiting from outside DC, make some noise. And it's not Virginia, all right? It's like really out there. I'm Reggie Kubico. I am one of the co-directors of Capturing Fire. I want to thank Alex and Glow at the Fringe. Please give them a big warm round of applause. Just to let you know what this is about, this is day 2 of the 3-day spoken word festival. Last night we had an amazing showcase of musicians and performers. Tonight there are 2 bouts. We have approximately a dozen or so poets from all over the country who are here to compete for the title of Queer Capturing Fire, Poet Flame, Honor, all of that stuff. And it's going to be very, very exciting. So we've got about 2 bouts. I'll be hosting the first bout, and Delrika Andrews will be hosting the 9 o'clock bout. I want to say that if you're enjoying the festivities, it happens again tomorrow, 12 to 1 at the DC Gay Center. There is free lunch. There is a storytelling, poetry performance workshop, and panel discussion about the future of queer spoken word and what can we do to intensify the momentum and what does it mean to be a queer poet and how can we solve all the problems in the world in an hour and a half. So it's going to be terrific. I consider storytelling part of spoken word, and Speak Easy DC has been a phenomenal organization, really adding voice to DC. One of the most talented theater artists who is talented as he is beautiful is in the house. Before we get the slam started, it gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome to the stage with a very queer DC story. Let's welcome Sheldon Scott! Say that, you know, we're going to cuddle together. And I know this is a big tease. All right, let's get up for Sheldon!
Yeah.
Picture it. My sleepy hometown of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Steamy summer of 1988. I was a 12-year-old boy desperately seeking for a man. Not much unlike the 33-year-old you see before you desperately seeking for a man, except for the target of this manhunt was a little bit different back then. I was looking for a man and a father figure. See, I was about to reach that sweet point where my entree to manhood was imminent. And no matter how hard she tried, my single mother would not be able to answer some of the questions that I had for her. And I would also not be able to ask her some of the questions that I needed answered. So I started this quest to find a man to fill this position. And I started with the fathers of friends and families of mine and quickly realized that my friends and family didn't want to share their father with me. So when I expanded my pool for the search, I then realized that I was not quite as attractive as a son. I didn't want to hunt, I wasn't a fisher, I wasn't into sports. I was a different kind of boy. I was interested in the more finer points in life, like needlepoint and topiary, British sitcoms and fine art. Not exactly the qualities that men were looking for in sons in the late 80s. So, as I continued my search, I found out that I had one redeeming factor, and that was the fact that I was an avid auto enthusiast, and men found that attractive. I mean, I would read and reread Car and Driver, Motor Trend, Road and Track magazines. And sometimes I would sit on the side of the highway and watch cars go by for hours. I'd gotten so good at it that at night, I would be able to tell you the exact make and model of a car by the headlights alone a mile up the road. And it was that common interest that I shared with my cousin Michael, who was 14 years older than I, that allowed us to start this relationship that might have him fill that position for me. And Michael and I would get together and we would talk about quarter-mile speeds, the new cars coming out this season, and then sometimes we would steal my mother's car and go out for joyrides. It wasn't quite as criminal as it sounded because remember folks, this is the South. My mother's car doors did not lock, the windows could not roll up, and it didn't need a key to crank. And one day, Michael and I had to go take my mother's car to get repaired. And we went to what we call in the South an oak tree mechanic. It's a very literal term. There's an oak tree and a mechanic. And you can always recognize these spaces because the leaves on these oak trees weren't quite as green as they should be. And it was always a cadre of men sitting down on makeshift benches. And then there was this, at the foot of the tree, was this big black sooty ring, which was essentially the remnants of numerous oil changes, tranny rebuilds, and muffler replacements. So we went to the finest oak tree mechanic in town, a guy by the name of Jabbo. And Jabbo, for all intents and purposes, was a man's man. He was big and greasy and unrefined in every way. That is except for his jerry curl. Jabbo was known to have the best jerry curl in the entire of Georgetown County. And so Michael and I made our way to Jabbo, and Michael got out of the car and was explaining to Jabbo what was wrong. And then they started this little ritual that these men do sometimes. They get together, they gather underneath these trees to beat the hot sun, and they start drinking and trading stories and trying to outlie each other. And this went on for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I was sitting in the car, basically sweltering to death. And I reached my breaking point, and I threw open the door, and I got out of the car, and I put my hands on my hips, and I said, "Michael, come on, I am ready to go." To which I got a unified response from every man of that tree of utter disgust. Except for Michael, who just kind of bowed his head into his chest and then kind of sunk into himself. But my little presentation seemed to have particularly offended Jabbo, who straightened up from what he was doing and locked eyes with me and walked across the yard and got right into my face and took his hand out and tugged on my genitalia 3 times just to make sure it was there, literally testing my manhood. To which I responded, "Unhand me, you barbarian! Michael, we must leave at once." Now, folks, if you are ever in the rural South, and a 12-year-old Geechee boy who has never been more than 60 miles away from where he was born breaks into the Queen's English, take note. And so Michael reluctantly comes to the car and he gets in and I sit down and I slam in the door and I'm still fuming. At this point, my accent, it went from the Queen's English to this deep Cockney accent that I don't know where the hell I got from. I must attribute that to absolutely fabulous. I didn't even know the words that I was saying. I just remember words like bullocks and bugger. And so Michael and I made our way home, and when we got there, he never made another mention of that incident. But suffice it to say, the relationship dissolved almost immediately. And there I was again, stuck to try to find the answers of what it meant to be a man. And then I did this on myself. And then I found that it took me off this road from bravo and brute force to this road of compassion and education and diplomacy. And then ultimately answered the question for myself, what it meant to be a man. Thank you.